Throughout history, storytelling has been the most effective way of passing along valuable lessons from the wise who have experienced the world to the young and to the many future generations after them. This insight can take many forms, from books to conversations to even film, and the Grand Budapest Hotel is no exception. It itself is storytelling, about storytelling, about storytelling, about a sort of Russian doll narrative if you like. Each of the people existing in the outer layers of this narrative have been affected by or learned from the lessons that stem from the events and characters that exist in the central story. The central story of the Grand Budapest Hotel is set in northeastern Europe at the beginning of a war that parallels the events of World War II. Focused around the luxurious Grand Budapest Hotel, the story follows the recently hired lobby boy, Zero, as he learns from his new mentor, the prestigious hotel concierge, Mr. Gustav. As they navigate the ups and downs that exist within the mayhem of stolen paintings, murder charges, love, prison, murders, villains, friendship, and much more, Zero comes to learn from his mentor that
there are still faint glimmers of civilization left in this barbaric slaughterhouse that was once known as humanity.
and that Gustav is one of them. The Grand Budapest Hotel suggests that it is crucial to learn from the stories of those who have experienced the cruel world and remain compassionate in order for one to be a positive influence on humanity, and that this understanding must be passed on to continue the progression of civility. The film uses frame narrative, showing the stories affected by the central lessons, narrative parallelism, and costume and framing development between Zero and his mentor Gustav in order to guide the audience to this understanding. The movie begins with the outermost layer of the frame narrative, a girl reading the Grand Budapest Hotel book. Then the author of the book, named Author, talking about the hotel and meeting Zero, and finally, the central story is narrated by older Zero.
It begins, of course, with...
But wait a second. How do we know that Gustav is good? In learning from those who came before, it is first important to be able to distinguish the compassionate from those who are not. Wes Anderson employs color variation, both in terms of cinematography and mise-en-scène, in order to accomplish this in the Grand Budapest Hotel. Throughout the film, certain characters can often be found in certain locations, like Gustav in the Grand Budapest Hotel or Agatha in the bakery. The mise-en-scène of these places contain warm, inviting colors, reds, oranges, pinks, which are brightened by the cinematography and thus made even more pleasant. Other settings consist of colder colors, deep olive greens, blacks, browns, that are filmed to be darker and appear forbidding. These are where the antagonists, or the barbaric, can be found. Therefore, since Gustav occupies locations of warmth and not hostility, he has been labeled by Anderson as a compassionate character.
Remember, I'm always with you.
Now that Gustav has been established as a compassionate character, how is the passing of wisdom from Gustav to Zero represented? In the beginning of the film, Gustav has more experience, both in terms of the hotel and life, so he wears the fancy suit of the hotel concierge, while Zero wears the simple uniform and hat of a lobby boy. Also, shown here, Gustav is closer to the camera than Zero, and thus appears larger, further commenting on their relative life experience. Initially, Zero learns through Gustav's stories and perception of the world, but as the film progresses, he eventually begins to experience life and gain wisdom alongside Gustav. To represent this, they are presented at even distances from the camera, showing Zero learning directly with Gustav. Additionally, both characters wear the same clothes, be it street clothes, religious robes, or even baker's uniforms, in each of these new endeavors. By the end of the film, Zero is actually shown larger in the frame than Gustav, in a way proving he understands what Gustav has taught him. Now with this, Zero earns the fancy purple suit of the hotel concierge, and his status, correlated to his understanding of compassion in the world, elevates to that of Gustav. The overall change for Zero can be best observed by comparing the parallelism between the two train stop scenes. The general aspects of both stops are repeated. They stop in a field, the military requests identification, Zero's is not accepted, and trouble ensues.
You filthy goddamn football practice asshole!
However, in the first, Gustav asks why the train is stopping.
Why are we stopping at a barley field?
And in the second, Zero asks.
Why are we stopping at a barley field again?
Thus, this shows Zero has stepped into Gustav's position. However, the importance of this is illustrated by the cinematography and story development. The first stop was filmed in color, bright and positive, ending with the main soldier showing compassion and pardoning them because Gustav had shown him compassion earlier in life.
Your companion was very kind to me when I was a lonely little boy.
The second stop, though, is filmed entirely in black and white, lacking color in order to portray the lack of humanity.
In the end, they shot him. So it all went to me.
Not only did the grand fortune of Gustav go to zero, but, more importantly, so did his compassionate nature. The film concludes by zooming out from the central story back to the most recent narrative. Each of the people shown in between have been affected by the story of Mr. Gustav, and only because his lessons were preserved through Zero.
You haven't been trained properly, Otto. Hoppy Boy never provides information of that kind. You're a stone wall, understood?
So, from showing to telling to writing and finally reading it, Gustav's understanding of compassion was able to reach the young girl and many others. Through costume and framing changes, representing the development of Zero, centered in a framed narrative, the Grand Budapest Hotel has guided the audience to understand that it is essential for humanity to learn from the stories of those who've experienced the world and to spread compassion to those who come after.